In terms of common ground, if you do some research, there is a lot that people agree on. The question is, what can we do about it? For example, 9 out of 10 Americans agree that fairness, compassion, and personal responsibility are extremely important. Yet, one reads that 1/3 of Democrats and 1/3 of Republicans believe that the other side doesn't accept any of that. That's one point. Another is political violence, the abhorring of political violence. Just like sensible gun reform, it's over 90% and counting. The question is, how do we marshal, these types of facts and commonalities that bring us all together?
Well, go ahead, please. You get the biggest applause. You go first.
The political scientists tell us that there are certain hallmarks to a fascist political party. And one of them is that they don't accept the outcome of democratic elections that don't go their way. A second is that they embrace or they refuse to disavow political violence as an instrument for obtaining and maintaining political power. A third is they're organized around a narcissistic, charismatic, or at least putatively charismatic figure. And that person's word and that person's will is elevated above the rule of law and the Constitution. So they all got mad at Joe Biden when he said that there were semi-fascist currents coursing through the Republican Party, but I'm sorry, if the shoe semi-fits, you semi-wear it, and that's just a reality. I would kind of deflect your question off to David, because I'm interested in what he thinks about this. The Republican Party was, of course, a new party, a third party, founded by Abraham Lincoln to supplant the Whigs. And it was a pro-freedom, pro-union, pro-prosperity, anti-conspiracy theory, anti-know-nothing, rationalist party. And they've taken it and they've reduced it to an authoritarian cult of personality. And I've told some of my Republican colleagues, I've said, when we get through this period in our history, and we will, you guys are going to be fit only for selling flowers and incense at Dulles Airport, and sleeping on the basement someplace. But I guess my question for you, David, is, what is the future of the Republican Party, assuming that the great American Democratic majority, which defeated Trump by 7 million votes in the popular vote in 2020, and will likely defeat him by 10 or 12 million votes with the young people coming out and participating, is the Republican Party salvageable, or should it be replaced for what it has done to America with this nightmare? And I mean that in a completely serious way.
Yeah, I don't think it's salvageable, is one of the reasons I left, right? One of the brief parts of my journey was fighting for some of these issues, call them moderate or pro-democracy within the party, and realizing I kept losing to very powerful forces that were really overtaking the space. And I think it's important to point out the Republican Party today has been a minority coalition for 30 years. It's only through electoral rules that they've been able to capture the White House 7 of the last 8 times. And so if we accept that it's a minority coalition at this point, then the answer is, how is it defeated? Prior to being in office, I worked on the Hill for 23 years, with or on the Hill in some capacity. So I had an opportunity to live through a lot of moments, a lot of presidencies, a lot of crises. And though I hate to hang it on this, I think it takes a crisis for there to be enough of an American movement that pushes the politicians to act. Now, we don't always see it. You would think after Newtown, we would see the response from politicians on gun violence reforms, but we didn't quite. But I would suggest the silver lining, and I really mean this. In 18 and 20 and 22, we saw the emergence of a pro-democracy voter coalition that said, I don't want to go in the direction that this minority coalition wants to take us. Not all those people polled, but they showed up, and they voted for Democrats in 18, 20, and 22 in sufficient numbers to protect the country. And that was before the lightning rod of the Dobbs decision. And I think that coalition this cycle just got a little bit bigger. So I think it's there. How does it actually effectuate policy, like real policy changes? I think it takes a crisis and probably the Democratic Party to be in the majority on the Hill. But I think the coalition is at least there to protect democracy right now.
Steve,
Can we talk about democracy on the ballot?
please.
Because I think that's where we're going. I'm going to give you some disheartening news, but some honest information. I run the Cornell University Institute of Politics and Global Affairs. And, oh, go Big Red, go Big Red. And so we look at this. We really focus on this issue of democracy on the ballot. You mentioned a majority of Americans support democracy, but when you really dive into it, here's what you learn. A majority of Republicans want democracy on the ballot. And why? Because they believe that what is happening to Donald Trump violates the norms of democracy. They believe that, and this isn't me speaking, folks, this is them speaking, the people who we have to listen to. They believe that when prosecutors say that Donald Trump can't win because of the 14th Amendment, they see that as an assault on democracy, an assault on their right to choose. Again, I'm not agreeing, but you've got to understand the mindset. They see these prosecutions as inflictions on democracy. I don't know how I got on the list, David Jolly, but I'm on the list that I get these texts constantly from Trump. I guarantee you that if I had my iPhone with me right now, while we were sitting here, I probably got 2 or 3 texts from Donald Trump saying, they're going to take Trump Tower away from me. They're taking my property away from me. They're destroying democracy.
Send $3.
So when Democrats send $3, so when we...
By the way, I put you on the list.
Thank you. Retaliating for those ads that I
That's
ran
right.
against them, and it's working. So when we Democrats talk about democracy and we point to these polls, it's really important that we understand that there is a granular breakdown in these polls that suggests that everybody's for democracy, only it's their version of democracy that they're for. And so Democrats have to be careful and strategic in messaging democracy. The other thing I want to mention, and hopefully we can talk more about this, in the presidential campaign is, folks, when we talk about what it's going to take to elect Joe Biden, remember, we don't have a national election anymore. We have a 7-state election for president. So let's disabuse ourselves of the notion that New York is going to play a pivotal role in determining who the president is. This is 7 states.
It could determine who controls the House.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was hoping we would get there, yes. But on the presidential, it is those 7 states, and within those 7 states, it is a small number of undecided voters. The Biden numbers are kind of locked in. The Trump numbers are locked in those 7 states. There's still a small number of swing voters. They go either way. And you know what they're not thinking about? Democracy. They're not watching, with all the respect in the world, they're not watching Jolly on MSNBC, and they're not watching Hannity on Fox News. They're watching their local affiliates because they're concerned about traffic and weather. They don't engage in elections until sometime after Labor Day. That's when they start thinking about this. And so it's vitally important for us to message to those voters' anxieties in order to bring them along. My favorite mantra in politics is you have to meet voters where they are. Not where you are, where they are. That doesn't mean you concede to them, but you're not going to bring them along unless you understand what they're thinking about and then bring them to where you want to be.